Hey, welcome back to Country Boy Drones. I am your pilot, JT. Today I'm going to be telling you about this new drone I just finished up. It was a pain in the ass, is what it was. I've had a nightmare just trying to get this thing to work, but I have to be honest when I say that, and also add in the fact that I was trying to use parts that were kind of just sitting on the shelf. Parts that I had taken off other drones or had dismantled other drones, and it was just spare parts laying around. Eventually I had to start putting some money into it and buying all new equipment so that I could get this thing to work right. But I have to say, it was well worth it. I've probably got $300 in this build. Maybe four. I don't know. I just know that this thing has been a nightmare. So I want to tell you a little bit about what I've built, and I want to go over a couple things with you because I'm excited to tell you about some products that I've never used before. This is my first time using them, and I'm excited to tell you about it. So this is my new build here. Let me turn some light on. And this is, and you guys have probably heard this. I know Bardwell did a review. I don't know if it was a review. He did a video on this flight control system, and now I'm going to tell you about it because I've actually had a chance to fly it, and I think it's absolutely amazing. This flight control stack is the Radix by FPV Brain, and they make two different kinds. They make the Radix and the Radix Li. I believe the Li is made more for fixed wing drones. Either one of them can be used in fixed wing, but I think the Li version, the Radix Li, is specifically made for fixed wing aircraft. So this one here is just the FPV Brain Radix flight control board paired with an X-Rotor 4-in-1 60 amp ESC. They're made to plug and play, which is really nice. There's no soldering. You just simply use a wiring harness, plugs in the ESC into the flight control, and you're up and running. But you have to take out the ground wire and the power wire coming from the ESC to the flight control board. Like if you had the X-Rotor stack, the G3 or the G2 stack, it just plugs and play. They're made for each other. So FPV Brain designed the Radix to go with quite a few 4-in-1 ESCs. The X-Rotor 60 amp 4-in-1 to be specific. But you have to take out the power wire and the ground wire that's normally in the harness. So I got to tell you, I was so stoked. I was actually how I ran across this is I was actually looking for some of these BMS 2000 motors. You guys know these are some of my favorite motors that I fly, and I have these on my Mr. Steel Alien edition, not the Apex, but the Alien, the first one. And I like these because they're 2000 kV, which means I can comfortably fly 4S, 5S, or 6S on it. But, and I've not found another motor in the 2000 kV range that's comparable to these until now. So let me tell you the story. So I was actually searching the internet. I searched everything, race day, get FPV, Rotor Riot, everywhere I could think of to look for these motors, and everybody was out of stock. Well, on the 4th or 5th page of the Google results, I ended up running across this little website called Addictive RC, and I was like, yeah, I've never heard of these guys, so yeah, let's see anyway. So I jump on there and it says they have like It's either like 60 or 90 of them in stock, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna call these guys and just make sure that this is real, because why does he have a bunch of them, or why do they have a bunch of them, and everybody else is out of stock, and they've been out of stock for a while. So I called up Addictive RC, and I spoke to a guy named John, the nicest guy you're ever gonna meet, one of the coolest guys, loves to talk FPV, and is quite knowledgeable in the product. And I was like, hey man, I jumped on your site. It says you have a ton of these in stock. I want to know if that's real, because everybody else is out of stock, and you're saying you've got a bunch of them. So can you just double check your stock and make sure you've got them in stock? And he says, yeah, give me a second. So 3 seconds later, he's like, yeah, man, I got like 60 of them or 90 of them or whatever it was. How many you want? I was like, really? The BMS 2000s? He said, yeah. I said, the T-Motor BMS 2000s, you have all those in stock? He's like, yeah. I was like, damn, dude. What else you got in stock? So I started looking through his website, and the guy carries. I noticed the guy carries all the good stuff. You're not going to find any BS in there. You're not going to find any crappy stuff, really. He only carries the good stuff, and 95% of it is in stock, if not more. So I was like, yeah, cool, man. I need 3 of them. And he goes, yeah, I'll get those out to you. Have you ever checked out the KO motors? I was like, I've never heard of them. He's like, yeah, man, they sell, I think, a 2000 kV. I was like, yeah, that's cool, man. Just go ahead and send me the BMS 2000. I'll put the order together. Go ahead and package it up. And he's like, can I tell you about these motors? And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Thinking that maybe they were a house brand, and he was just trying to, push them on me or whatever. And so he starts going into detail about these motors and how they're made differently than the other motors, how the thrust is just absolutely insane, the smoothness of the motor, just a very well built motor, and they're beautiful. So I'm like, okay, so I'm punching through his website, and I come across them, and I've never heard of them before. I thought they might have been a house brand that he was trying to push, and I said, yeah, maybe on my next order. So then we got to talking about, I got to talking to him about tuning the quads, and he's like, you're looking for something that's really dialed in, that you don't have to do a lot of tuning on. And I was like, yeah, man, I get tired of trying to find that butter spot. I just want to be able to plug it in, and I've only ever had one quad where you build the thing, you don't change any of the PIDs, and you go out and you fly it, and that was the G2 stack from X-Rotor. He's like, oh yeah, man, you're going to want to check out the Radix. I'm like, again, who's that? He's like, yeah, man, the guy that designed it's here in America. He's this and that. He's like this really smart guy who worked on this project and that project. And anyway, I heard a couple different things. I'm like, yeah, okay. So he was telling me, he's like, the Radix flight control board is the only board to use a Bosch gyro. Now, for many of you, you're like, yeah, okay, it's a gyro. No, it's not. It's not just a gyro. This is a true gyro. And the difference between a lot of the other flight control boards, and I'm looking around for some other boards I might have, but the difference between the Radix and the other flight control boards is that the other flight control boards use a cell phone gyro. They're cheap. They're built in multiples of like 1 billion. They really weren't designed to go on an FPV quad. They're made for cell phones. So that's why you have 2, 4, 8, 16, and 32 hertz sampling, trying to max these things out to where they'll be to where they'll work good. Bosch is a true gyro. It was specifically made for flight control boards. And we all know the name Bosch. You see it in a lot of your OEM equipment like Chevy and Ford and Chrysler, and we've heard of Bosch spark plugs and stuff like that. So Bosch, B-O-S-C-H. It's a true gyro. And because it's a true gyro, the sampling rate goes no higher than 3.20 hertz. That's right. 32 hertz on a normal board, up to 32 hertz, normally flown at about 8 to 16, and 3.2 hertz on the Radix flight control board. It doesn't need to be maxed out. It doesn't need to have a crazy hertz setting. 3.2 is the highest. You can get all the way down to 1/4 of a hertz, 0.25. So I'm thinking, man, if that thing's going to be the real deal, and these motors that he's hyping up for me, you know, telling me about how smooth they are and the power they have, let's try it. So I did. I purchased 6 motors, and these motors, this is the biggest motor I've ever flown. This is a 2208, so the magnets are like this big. 2208, 2050 kV, still in the 4 to 6S range. And he's like, man, you could always put the 2550s on there and run your 6S. And I was like, yeah, but I like the, did you say 2550 on a 6S? It's like, yeah, man, KO builds a hell of a motor. It'll do 6S on the 2550 kVs. 6S on a 2550, not 2050, 2550. It's like, yeah, man, no problem. Like, they'll handle an 8S battery. I'm like, holy shit. That would be absolutely insane. Hooking up a 6S battery to a 2550 kV, like, the arms on my quad would break off with the amount of power. And I have to tell you, I have never flown a motor that has more thrust. Now, the downside to that is they're not efficient whatsoever. These motors are not efficient when it comes to battery. They will suck a freaking battery. These are actually made for drag racing, so you have to turn them down. And what I did is I dropped mine down. I dropped my my battery output or throttle output to 80%, and I have found that 80-85% is the sweet spot. So you turn it down to 80 to 85% throttle output, and now it feels like a normal motor would, and you still have that ridiculous thrust, but it's not consuming so much battery. I have to say, and I know I just did a video on Steele's motors a couple weeks ago about how well I like them, and I wouldn't fly another motor. And if I hadn't have flown these, I would still stick to that. Still love the Steele Stout V3s, still love the motor, beautiful motor, built very well, definitely recommend them. But these are called the Pro Series KO Cryo 2208 by 2050 kV. Absolutely the smoothest motors I have ever flown. As a matter of fact, on my transmitter, my throttle is set up so you can feel each individual notch, and it's just barely, you can adjust how smooth you want that, or you can set it to where you feel the notches. The motors are so responsive that just going one little notch like that, the motor responds to it so well that I'm going to have to take all this notchiness feel out of the throttle and make this completely smooth. I don't like to do that because this kind of lets me feel where I'm at. But these motors are absolutely insane when it comes to responsiveness and how smooth they are. So I'm going to have to take this apart and adjust that so it's completely smooth. Insane. I've never had a motor do that. And when I'm talking smooth, I mean from 0 to 100 on your throttle is just the whole thing. I mean, I can't even put it into words how smooth these motors are. Now, I touched a little bit on how they're a battery killer, and if you're getting into it, they're going to suck your batteries. The motors on these, or the magnets on these motors, are a lot bigger than a normal motor like a 2204, 2205, 2206. These are a lot taller magnets, and they're actually made for drag racing. They're made for just getting it. And the thrust in these things are insane how strong these motors are. Now, the only way that I would fly these things is with turning down the throttle limit. Meaning, instead of when I'm at full throttle, I'm at 100% output. Like I said, I had to drop these down to about 80 to 85%. If I would have known how powerful these things are, I probably would not have ordered them for a freestyle quad. But after adjusting them down, they're fine. They're perfect. The thrust is there. The speed is absolutely insane. I'll tell you actually how strong these motors are. I put a biprop on it, and these things spin so hard, the thrust is so impressive that it just bends the hell out of these props. I mean, it literally distorts them to where it just goes crazy because it's just putting too much power on them. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what it's doing. You put a tri-prop on it, you don't get that. You put a biprop on it and do a punch out, and it literally mangles these things. Insane. That's why I have these out. That's why I tried them. I can't fly with them. Too much power in these motors. Now that I've turned it down, probably be fine. But when I had it set at 100% power output or throttle output, it was just not practical. So if you're going to buy these motors, and I highly, highly recommend these motors. God, these things are just, you'll be blown away at just how smooth and powerful these motors are. I can't say enough good about them. The only downside is, when you get power, you're sucking that battery, and I mean, it's insane how hot these batteries are if I'm really getting into it. Now that I've turned it down to 80% throttle, I'm not getting that. They're perfect. So you definitely need to turn them down if you're to do some freestyle with them. If you're going out and doing some racing, get on it. These are what you want right here. Insane. Now, here's the other cool thing. Now, so these are the KO Demon Seed, not Demon Speed, Demon Seed. And the way they're designed, and this is what makes these things unique, is the way these motors are designed. This top part here is designed to force air through the motor, through the magnets around the stator. So that's why they are so tall. And I'm trying to put this in the words. This is just an insane motor. So this motor is designed, the top part of it, to suck air in and push it through the bottom, keeping your motors cool. So when you're getting on it and your battery's puffing out, these things are still room temp. Like, they put a lot of thought into building these motors and making them what they are. Here's the other cool thing. They've got a new motor out, a new cryo motor that they're just getting out, just putting out, and it takes a shot of oil, and they sell the oil pump, and it goes right on the top, and you just pump that. It pumps oil down through the motor, and it keeps the motor even cooler, and that's made for straight out drag racing and stuff like that. I don't know a lot on it. I just know from talking to John the new technology that they're coming out with these motors. I really think you're going to start seeing KO take over as top dog in the FPV motor industry. I really do. If you've never heard of them, you will start hearing about them, because they're badass. I truly believe KO is going to take over the motor industry. These kill T-Motor in every aspect, and T-Motor is a great motor. These kill it. I cannot recommend a better motor. I just have to find what works for me. This motor here is not optimal for a freestyle quad. I know KO makes them an optimal motor for the freestyle quad. I just have to find what it is. I'm new to this motor as well. I simply chose the wrong model of KO motors. So I want to go back to the flight control board, and I love this flight control board, but I absolutely hate it as well, and I'm going to tell you why. So I'm trying to get away from flying the GoPro camera on top, and I threw a Cadix Turtle V2 FPV camera with a DVR. I threw that on here to begin with, and I'm like, cool, man, it's got everything right up front, your 5-volt, your ground, and your camera in. It's right up front where everything's supposed to be, along with your UART1, so you can run smart audio as well. And I get everything hooked up, I go out and fly. The camera's got lines in it. I fly for about 15 seconds and the camera just goes out. I'm like, oh shit, what the hell's going on? So I come back in, I resolder everything, I'm looking at everything, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. Maybe the camera's bad. So I go through 6 Cadix Turtle V2 cameras. I go through 6 different ones that I have in my box up there. They're all new, and I'm getting the same thing out of all of them. I'm thinking, man, the firmware's got to be bad with these things. So I update the firmware, I downdate the firmware. I'm trying everything to get this thing to work. So I contact Brain FPV, and I tell him what I've got. I said, you know, I'm trying to put a Cadix Turtle V2 camera on it, and I'm running a TBS Unify Pro 5G8HV VTX, and I'm running that on 5 volts. Wait a minute, is it 5 volts? 7 volts. So I'm running that off of, I forget how I had it. Anyway, I think I had it powered directly with the XT60, and the camera keeps going out. So I can't figure it out for the life of me. I contact Brain FPV, and I speak to Martin. Now, Martin is the one who has designed this flight control board, and he tells me that, you know, there's like, I think there's 3 5-volt outputs, but there's a total of 600 milliamps, and with what I have going on here, I'm reaching that limit. So 5 volts with a total of 600 milliamp output, and I've reached that limit. And that's why my camera keeps going out. And it would only go out when I would hit record on the DVR, so it sucks more power to power that. Camera would run fine. I hit record on the DVR, and 10-15 seconds of flight, and it goes out. So I said, you built a flight control board with 2 or 3 5-volt outputs, but you can't power anything on it, man. They're useless. And I said, I'm going to have to put a BEC on it. And if you don't know what a BEC is, basically it's this little, I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can get that set up so you can see it better. There we go. So it's this guy right here. and the way it works is you connect your positive and negative from your XT60 or your ESC. That connects to the BEC, and then what that does is it takes the 25.5 volts that comes from my battery, and it busts it down to, you have two options with this one. This is an iFlight one. You can do a 5 volt output or a 12 volt output. 5 volt at 3 amps, 12 volt at 2 amps. And I'm running 5 volt at 3 amps. So it takes that 25.5 volts and it busts it down to 5 volts, and then I can power whatever I want off of that. And it cleans it up too. It cleans the power up and sends it on out. So I'm like, man, you're telling me that all these outputs on this board are worthless? And you know, kind of like he explained, it's a work in progress. I believe, and I don't want to speak for them, but I believe it is their first board that they're putting out, and it is a work in progress. They've got some things they're going to change, and they're going to upgrade, and they're going to be putting out something probably here in the near future that's going to have a lot better filters on it, better outputs, better inputs. But for right now, the flight control board, I would say, is the best response I've ever felt in a flight control board. And that's simply because of that Bosch Gyro. I don't know why everybody's not using that. And like I told Martin, I sent him back an email. I was like, hey man, you want to build the best flight control board? In my opinion, I would model it after the X-Rotor G2 or G3, preferably the G2. I always thought the G2 was better. The G2 with the Bosch Gyro and the Brain FPV OSD that you guys have, because that's absolutely insane. That's a whole different video, how they're doing that. And that, in my opinion, would be a perfect flight control board. I would buy no other. I would fly that board forever. And they could either do it on an F4 or F7 platform. Either way, I would be good. But a G2, X-Rotor G2 flight control board with the Bosch Gyro, the Brain FPV OSD, oh my God, it wouldn't get any better than that. That would be the ultimate flight control board. So I'm excited to see what Brain FPV comes out with. And for right now, I would say, if you're going to buy the Brain FPV Radix flight control board, definitely buy a BEC. The iFlight BEC is going to have, like I said, it's going to have 5 volt or 12 volt, and it's just simple bridging two solder points if you want either or. So that's what I built. I've got 60 amp 4-in-1 X-Rotor ESC. I've got the Radix flight control board. I threw, which one is this? The TBS Unify Pro V3, the one Steele uses on his quad. Kind of messed up though with that. I wish I would have gotten a regular Unify Pro with the problem with the V3 is it doesn't have a 5 volt output to power the camera. So that means I've got to go off. Now, here's another thing too. If I would have gotten the right TBS Unify Pro, like I normally get, like the HV with the 7 pins that has your audio and your smart audio or data port, I wouldn't have had to have the BSC. I could have just powered it straight from the battery to the Unify Pro, and then it would have had a 5 volt output for camera. And the TBS Unify Pro V3 doesn't have that. So if I'd have bought the right Unify Pro, that's where I messed up, I would not have to have that BEC. Or I could have bought the BEC, cleaned up the power before it went to the VTX, and then the VTX would clean it up even more to my camera. You could do it a couple different ways, and right now I'm absolutely satisfied with this build. The camera quality is absolutely insane. John at Addictive RC turned me on to This is the Runcam Phoenix 2. Runcam Phoenix 2. Super nice picture. It's my first time using it. I'm impressed. I'll probably buy a couple of them. And yeah, I'm super impressed with the Phoenix 2. A brilliant picture. Now, I'm also using the Team Black Sheep antenna for my video, and then Crossfire, of course, for my transmitter or receiver. I'm running a 50 volt by 1000 microfarad cap on the XT60. These are the 2208 Demon Seed 2050s, 2050 kVs, and the motor wires on these things. I think the motor wires on these things are freaking 18 gauge. 18 gauge. That's the first time I've seen it on an FPV motor. Most of the time they're 20 or 22 gauge wires. These are 18, man. These things are made to put some power through them. I mean, they're just built from the ground up to put that power through, which means I used a 12 gauge XT60 power wire instead of a 14 gauge like I normally would, because yeah. And then I'm running I forget what prop this is. Oh, these are the HQs. I think these are 5047s or 5043s. I can't remember. I know it's a perfect prop for this setup, and yeah. So I like it. I like it. I like it. If you guys are thinking about putting together a fun quad, something smooth, I definitely recommend the motors. The Radix flight control board, absolutely amazing on the gyro. Just the locked in feeling. You're not going to find anything that feels as locked in as this thing. But keep in mind, it will power nothing. That's the only con I have found about it. It does have camera control on it, which is nice when it works. When it works, I think there's some stuff to be figured out there. I think there's some bugs and stuff that need to be figured out there. But I'm very excited to see what Brain FPV comes up with next, and I think they will, on their next board, knock it out of the park. They're doing some development stuff right now, and it shouldn't be too long here in the near future. We're going to see some exciting stuff come from Brain FPV and their Radix line, and I will be the first one to sign up for the new flight control board. I definitely want to see what they've got going next. But yeah, if you guys have any experience with this stuff that I mentioned, please comment, like, and subscribe. Sorry it's so long in between videos. I've just got a lot going on, and this winter I should be pumping out a lot of videos that I've already got the footage for. I just got to sit down. I got to find the time, sit down, and put it all together. So plan on doing quite a few videos from the summertime that I've done over the winter. But yeah, hey, as usual, man, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I hope you're staying healthy with the whole COVID thing. I think that's starting to kind of trail off. For all of my subscribers up in the Northwest, Portland, Seattle area, I'll pray for you guys. I know there's a lot of civil unrest going on up there. I think it's pretty pathetic, and I just hope you guys are safe, be smart, and yeah. I'm JT with Country Boy Drones. I appreciate each and every one of you, and as usual, until I see you again.